Hello everybody. Welcome back for another video. Hope you're all doing well and that you're all having a great day. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook and on Twitter. Click the links in the description below. And without any further ado, let's jump right into it. Welcome back to Wave of Optimism news. That's kind of been the trend the last like 3 weeks now. I'm not exactly sure what's going on, but I hope that it never ends. We're getting a lot of on-chain analysms. We're getting a lot of predictions and hyper bullish ideas as to where the cryptocurrency space is going. And I mean short term and long term. I mean, it literally depends on which video that you're looking at. But the optimism is definitely there. Mega popular on-chain analyst, his name is Willy Woo, has predicted that Bitcoin will ultimately hit a massive price for one key reason. I'll try and let you guess exactly what it is. Wu told 1 million people on Twitter that Bitcoin could capture 3% of the total wealth assets and soar by more than 975% from its current value. And I'll say even on the side as well, it is kind of nice to have people who are relatively realistic with their numbers. I'll explain. When he says like 3% of the total wealth of assets on the planet, there are a number of people. Now listen, there's a difference between 2024 and 2025 and 2040 and 2045. We had predictions recently from, I believe it was Fidelity. If I'm not mistaken, they were like some very large institution who said that they were talking, and I think the number was $24 million per Bitcoin. But their time frame was also like the year 2050. So it seems like quite believable. Okay, cool. It might take us a couple of decades to actually get there. But sometimes people have like really outlandish ideas as to how much money Bitcoin could capture in a short period of time. I think 3% is totally believable over the course of the next couple of years. I mean, especially as we see the integration of Bitcoin into everything. Especially even just like with the advent of the ETFs, people don't understand that it basically indicates that Bitcoin is here to stay. Like there is no like Bitcoin bye-bye, like Bitcoin is part of the traditional financial market. So Willy Woo says if we capture 3% of the entire market, that we'll see Bitcoin's value rise another 975% from where we currently are. What he says is a little bit convoluted and out there, but I think you'll get it. He said, and I quote, "Nobody knows what the ultimate price of Bitcoin will be, but simple math can give us an upper bound." He said wealth assets currently sits at around $500 trillion, and that also depends on which metric that you're looking at. Some people put that number at 1 quadrillion. It's the same exact thing when you look at like the amount of money that's currently like sloshing around on the planet. People sometimes look at the M1 and the M2 money amounts, but then also a lot of people put in M3. M3 puts us into like several quadrillion dollars because it's accounting for all the debt that's also out there as well. The idea being, if you account for all the debt that the world has, that individuals have, that companies have, if they swap that figure over into Bitcoin, for instance, let's say, I hope you don't, I hope no one does, but let's say you have like $10,000 worth of debt. And in the future, it's, 10,000 Satoshis. And companies began to simply say, instead of valuing against the dollar, which is very weak, your new debt is now valued in 10,000 Satoshis. Therefore, the debt has swapped over into a Bitcoin standard. So you have to pay in Bitcoin. So therefore, Bitcoin gets strengthened. Bitcoin is valued in more things. You get the general idea. He said wealth assets are roughly around $500 billion, which is insane. Did any of you ever think that you would live in a world like with a quadrillion anything? I remember being young and having $5 and I was like, I'm rich. I remember my first job, I was working in a library. I'm not even joking. My paycheck, I think my first paycheck was like $78 and I was like, oh my gosh, I couldn't believe it. It's fairly long ago. I remember I bought a bunch of CDs with it. Very different in terms of $500 trillion. He says if Bitcoin captured all of this, and he wrote in quotes or parentheses, never going to happen. That's what I like about the realism there. It would be amazing if Bitcoin had a $500 trillion market cap. But for the sake of realism, let's do just 3%. He said we would have $24 million per coin. Today's value before future inflation adjustment. The question is, what will be the realistic allocation for everyone? Wealth management is very predictable, and money flows in a conservative manner according to known wisdom. Bitcoin, even in the early phase of the asset class, Fidelity, for those of you who missed it, these are real numbers. And I remember going over these numbers. Maybe I exist as a very half glass full, or maybe glass is extremely full, rose-colored glasses kind of guy, where I believe that, like, if you have good news, you should celebrate it in a sort of way. The news that the really good news that we get about crypto and Bitcoin is usually left with, like, there's like one balloon at a birthday party and someone walks up to it and pops it. That's usually how the news kind of goes for crypto. Do you remember, I believe this was last year, Fidelity, we had news that leaked, if you will. Fidelity, the people with the ETF, said that they basically told their wealthiest clients, wealthiest people on the planet, people who have hundreds of millions of dollars, billions of dollars, they told them that they should have a 1 to 3% allocation into Bitcoin. Usually, for risky assets, or if you have a large amount of money, an asset manager will tell you to allocate around 0.5%, half of 1% into an asset class. When we got news that Fidelity was telling these billionaires to put 1 to 3% of their money into Bitcoin, my head was spinning because I was like, this is it. This is the moment where, like this, not even like a trickle down kind of thing, where people in crypto would hear this and they would go, right, rich people are buying all the coins out there. While we have seen numbers, and he said it again, and I thank you, Willy Woo, for being realistic and saying the numbers. For those of you who also forgot, if you forgot this, that's crazy. We had news that BlackRock said that they told their clients that they should have an 85% allocation into Bitcoin. Do you remember when they said these numbers? Bitcoin was around $17,000 per coin. We just had news recently, a couple of videos ago, where I also ranted and raved that whales are holding the majority, not like, 51%. Whales are holding the majority and have been buying the majority of Bitcoin. It's because these asset managers have told them over the years. They told you. I told you. Look at what these people are talking about. Look at what they're saying. Look at how much money is being allocated into Bitcoin. And of course, we're hearing about these people becoming, brand new billionaires and super wealthy from the cryptocurrency space. It's because of stuff like this. Fidelity recommended 1 to 3%. BlackRock said 85%. They said if we assume 3% as a sensible allocation, then the lower bound evaluation for Bitcoin is $700,000 per coin. Wu believes Bitcoin will hit the six-figure Bitcoin price target once global adoption reaches anywhere between 16 and 50%. He says the current Bitcoin adoption rate is around 4.7% at the current time. He said, so now everyone is asking when. This is also a well-known phenomenon via the adoption S-curve. 16% is early majority, 50% is late majority. Wealth management is somewhere in this sector. So figure out when the Bitcoin adoption enters 16 to 50% world adoption based on the yellow line. And there's a little chart right here, the very famous chart that people use for the adoption of the internet and for Bitcoin's adoption. We are in the early stages of Bitcoin adoption, which is something that a lot of people also miss out on as well. You might have seen a lot of times, or rather people look up typically online, is it too late to get into Bitcoin? Like, is it still worth it to buy Bitcoin? Because people don't understand how early that we actually are. People keep assuming that they've missed the train, or that there's some like hypothetical train that's running around somewhere that they just aren't a part of, or that they're not on, because they keep seeing Bitcoin's price rising, or Bitcoin is currently too high for the average person to be able to buy an entire coin. This is where the idea of a multi-million-dollar Bitcoin comes in, because it's like, even if you hold smaller amounts of Bitcoin, it adds up. It's the same exact thing if you hold 1/10 of a Bitcoin years ago. It doesn't look like a lot, but now you have like, was it $6,000, $7,000, which also, if we can also be completely realistic, which most people also don't have. Like I told you before, I keep telling friends and family to at least buy 1/100th of a Bitcoin so that they at least have something, because, yeah. So, right, this optimism is all over the place. This bull run is expected to be one of the greatest that we've had thus far. The price predictions for this market are absolutely completely insane. It depends on, if you go anywhere from 2025 to 2029, there are people who are predicting that the market might not slump as much as people think that it will. And even more so, I'll add this in and then we'll move on. The amount of downward pressure over the last 2 weeks that we might have had in the prices. For those of you who've been missing the news, every time that people sold off, and the only people who are selling are retail investors and or short-term holders, people who've been in the market for less than 6 months, all those coins have been bought up either by ETFs or by whales every single time. Looks like Bitcoin might go up by 975%. And it's still early to get into the cryptocurrency market news. And yeah, let's move on. Also in the news, heavily in the news, the European Central Bank, or the ECB, is preparing for 2 more rate cuts to prevent inflation from falling below the 2% target amid the weakening Eurozone economy. I won't lie, I love news that focuses heavily on how bad other places are doing, except for the United States. There's a lot, and it's kind of an always has been kind of thing, but the last 2 years have been quite particular, where a lot of people keep pretending that the economic situation within the United States just isn't bad. So there's constantly always Argentina's not doing too well. Latin America's not doing too well when it comes to money. Oh my gosh, look at what's happening to India. Have you guys seen how bad the Eurozone is doing? That's also a very oddly, specifically popular news thing on Twitter that a lot of people keep reporting on, that the Euro's not doing well. And then you kind of give them a side eye and you're like, have you seen the US dollar and the US economy? A lot of countries right now are preparing to cut their interest rates. Yes, The economies are not doing well. You might have noticed the stock market crashing the last couple of weeks and not doing well. It goes up by a bit, then it goes back down. This is the cycle that we were talking about earlier in the year. For those of you who were not here, governments, creators of monies, have pushed themselves, and I mean like really like self-push themselves into a corner. The problem is that they print too much money. They're not going to be changing their economic policies anytime soon, so they continue printing. They continue to take out enormous amounts of debt that will never be repaid. So in order to keep the economy going and also to pay back the debts when they try to, there's always like historically a thing, if you've never seen it, where countries and whatever economies will sometimes try to go, here's 100 million, look, we gave you something, when their debts are in hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars. They constantly need to print more to be able to pay back some of their debts and keep the economy going. The problem is when you print more, you devalue the currency, and whatever you printed beforehand, whatever was there, continues to become devalued. The issue is that if interest rates don't go down and they stay where they currently are across all economies, this doesn't incentivize people to take out debt. The world runs on debt. For those of you who haven't understood the purpose of Bitcoin yet, it's because when you look at Bitcoin on a screen, you see exactly how much Bitcoin that you have. You can check and verify how much Bitcoin that someone else has. Remember all the panics that we had before, where how much Bitcoin does the US have? How much does the UK have? How much does Mt. Gox have? It's because it's verifiable. Debt and a lot of the inner workings of the current system that we live in, or the older system, are not always verifiable. Debt reigns free and is, running rampant because of these kinds of things. The point of Bitcoin is it's meant for everyone. What you have is what you have. You are not meant to take out debt against Bitcoin or have a debt-based Bitcoin. You have the Bitcoin that you have. So the problem is, once again, drawing it all back, is that they have to continue printing more money to prop up the markets. That's exactly what we saw in 2020 and 2021, for those of you who forgot. Remember that curve, that huge line that we saw going up for the US inflation rate? It's because no one was spending. People were taking their money out of the stock market, and to show strength and to show integrity and to show trust, the Fed had to print more money to push into the stock market to basically keep it afloat. The problem is that you inflate the US dollar and it causes the economy to begin to collapse. So you have lower interest rates, which is meant to incentivize people to take out loans to get into debt so that they basically pay back this debt over the course of a long period of time. But if no one is taking out the debt, what do? You can't lower interest rates anymore. Remember, that was also a thing in 2020, 2021, where we saw negative interest rates. The problem is the economy begins to wobble. What's going on? Nothing's really helping. Nothing's really working. So they raise interest rates to try and get things under control. The problem is the higher the interest rate, the less likely it is for people to actually take out debt to keep the economy going. The old system is crumbling right in front of us. I don't know if I've said it before, like we're witnessing history, and a lot of people tend to be relatively blasé about it or pretend that it doesn't affect them. No, the old system is ending. This is why crypto is so important. This is why the masses need to get into crypto. This is why we see tons of new Bitcoin addresses every single day, because the old system is failing. It's collapsing. This is why we keep hearing news about new people creating addresses around the world. It's because they're choosing to put, like, Bitcoin is more stable than their local currencies. So what's happening right now is basically these governments have figured out that they have to lower interest rates to try and incentivize people and companies and other governments to take out debt against them or with them. It's the same exact thing as I mentioned before. A lot of people don't understand, like, when you see these gigantic buildings being built, and you might have also noticed in the last couple of years, these like new gigantic towers, all these new builds, these new fancy, beautiful buildings, a lot of them around you are probably also not done being built. You might have noticed that. Do you know why? It's because they can't get the money from it, and or they're choosing not to take out debt at a 4, 5, 6, 7% interest rate. So governments have to lower the interest rates. The problem is that when they lower interest rates, inflation is going to rise. The way that money creation works now is that when you take out debt by a bank, the bank issues that debt basically from them. It all goes through the central bank at some point, but the bank is literally like, you can like look it up. Like it's not a tinfoil hat thing. If you sit down with someone and say, hey, I need 300,000 because I want to buy a home. The house is 500,000. I'm putting 200K down. They literally enter it into the computer and they make that money digitally. The information is sent to the local whatever bank at some point, and the bank goes, okay, this is how much money that we actually have to make or print or digitally make through the system. That's the new money that ends up getting created, and it is paid back by you over the course of a 15, a 20, or 30-year period. Do you understand? Like, the system is completely backwards. So when they lower interest rates, because they have to, because we are going to be in a recession otherwise, the inflation rate is going to rise because of all the new money that ends up being printed by people taking out debt and the governments who are printing to pay back their debt, and also whatever other obligations that they might have monetarily, and also the new money that will flow into the markets and into the bond markets and into the stock market to once again keep everything afloat, because nothing was fixed in 2008, 2009. The European Central Bank is preparing 2 more rate cuts to prevent inflation from falling below the 2% target amid the weakening Eurozone economy. European Central Bank's Greek Central Bank President Yannis Stournaras emphasized the impact on the low economic growth on inflation in an interview with Plateau Brief, and is expecting 2 rate cuts by the end of 2024. Stournaras predicted that the European Central Bank will reduce borrowing costs in September or October. The question mark in the sky, for those of you who haven't been seeing it, is everyone's expecting the Fed to maybe cut rates around September. We have zero confirmation of this, but these are the predictions that have been floating around. We are witnessing history. The world is crumbling. If more people understood decentralization and Bitcoin instead of rushing into the market to make a quick buck, we'd be in a very different place right now. Anywho, yeah, that's the European Central Bank, and I guess also interest rate news. I know a lot of people are waiting for interest rates to fall. So are a lot of companies, because you will see quite quickly how much assets go up when interest rates get cut, especially the US interest rates, because people are going to be taking out once again an egregious amount of money to also pay off their debts. If you ever get a chance, watch a documentary on like real estate and how debt works. It will probably frighten you. You assume that these people spending $100 million to build a building have that money? Nope. They usually have multiple funding rounds from other people, and they hope and they wish and they pray, and they cross their fingers together as hard as they can to hope that all of the units sell out so that they can make their money back and take out a huge, massive amount of debt again to do the exact same thing next year. The world is weird. Moving along. Also in the news, this one was a bit of a head scratcher because it's like, sure, the Ethereum Developer Community Conference, or EdCon, featured a keynote by Vitalik Buterin, and it was titled The Next 10 Years of Ethereum, which he summarized in his vision for Ethereum's evolution by the year 2034. I shudder to think. Ethereum is the most used blockchain on the planet. The issue is that Ethereum is becoming a yeah, sure, we're gonna do that. Yeah, look over there. Yeah, that's gonna happen. You see that? See over there? That's also gonna happen as well. Ethereum needs to shape up, or it's going to be overtaken and or simply not be used as much. I think that's a while away. However, a lot of the things that were envisioned for Ethereum back in 2016 have still not happened. A lot of these were talked about, and this was going to take place in 2017 and 2018 and 2021. I remember because I made videos about them. However, Ethereum is still at the head of the pack. But I mean, 10 years is such a gigantically wide open, open book kind of being like, yeah, it can happen at any given time. That's why I was like, okay. Buterin speech covered a series of transformative changes expected in Ethereum's future, focusing on topics like voting, scalability, and user experience, and also technological advancements as well. Buterin envisions a significant role for Ethereum in the voting sector by 2034. He predicts that Ethereum-based wallets will facilitate more transparent voting processes. This integration aims to enhance the integrity and transparency of voting mechanisms. So, backing it up there, this was a dream for a lot of different chains years ago. The assumption is that countries would choose them to actually put their voting systems on top of. I think we are a very long way away from that. And I'll tell it to you this way. Mainly because governments want to have control over the voting experience. And if you give over or relinquish that control to any kind of decentralized system, it's probably not something that they want. It's very similar to how we're seeing pushback when it comes to countries adopting Bitcoin or allowing Bitcoin to be legal or them banning Bitcoin outright. These are usually countries where corruption is kind of an everyday thing. If you allow people in your country to come to understand that their local currency is incredibly bad, continues to inflate, and I'm talking about Zimbabwe levels of inflation. If you allow the people to understand that there's an alternative and 50 million people use that alternative, the government then no longer has that power. This is going to take a very long time for us to actually get there. I think we are a ways away from that. Additionally, Buterin highlighted the potential of combining voting with financial aspects, suggesting that Ethereum's capabilities could extend into new governance and decision-making areas. Also, once again, people are going to be not too keen on relinquishing that type of power. Scalability and transaction fees were another major focus of his speech. He expressed his belief that Ethereum will make significant advancements in scalability over the next decade. The problem is that we heard that also back in good old 2016. We heard that by 2017, Ethereum would be able to do around 5,000 transactions per second. And that by the time we got to 2025 or somewhere within that bubble, we would have you can look it up. You can look at my old videos. You can look up news articles. That we would have a 1 million transaction Ethereum. That was because of multiple other side chains and other things like that would be helping and yada, yada, yada. But the main chain itself would be able to do 10,000 to around 100,000 transactions per second. So forgive me if I am skeptical. And once again, for those of you who don't know and need to know, I also hold Ether and have been for a number of years, because a lot of people, sometimes I'll talk about a coin in the comment section lights up. You don't have that coin. You can't talk negatively about it. Okay, sure. Why not? We've heard a lot of this for a number of years, especially within the Ethereum ecosystem. So forgive my skepticism. This is why I was saying before, it's quite significant that Ethereum is the most used blockchain, but that it also has Polygon as well. Polygon, that chain is doing essentially exactly what Ethereum said it would do back in 2016. I don't know how many transactions per second Polygon has, but it's rapid. It's the same exact thing with transaction fees. The transaction fees on Polygon are like 2 cents. So why exactly Ethereum hasn't matched that energy, I don't know. Once again, I'm not a coder. I cannot say. It's not me talking down to people who are coding these things. It's just more of a 8 to 10 years is a very long time to say that you're going to do something and then nothing ends up actually happening. So cool. It kind of goes on where basically he's talking about other things that he thinks are going to happen and what could take place. And this is the so-and-so. And it's like, sure. I would love to see all these things relatively quick. I don't think that it's going to be easy for Ethereum to be usurped, but I do think over the course of the next 3, 4, 5 years, we would begin to hear rumblings that other chains are kind of moving up in favoritism. But as it is right now, Ethereum has been adopted by hundreds of gigantic companies and banks. So if that tide ends up changing, of course, it will make major news. But it's very interesting to see how long this has taken and what Ethereum is currently capable of. I think it could be capable of a lot more. But once again, I don't know what it entails of how to actually build a lot of those things. I do not think that the market is going to wait until 2034. No. Yeah. I think that's going to do it for this video. I do hope that you have all enjoyed. I do hope that you all are having a great day, morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are, wherever the heck you might be. I do hope it is absolutely fantastic. Thank you all once again for watching, listening, liking, commenting, and supporting. And I will most certainly be talking to you all soon. See you.